Hello and welcome to the Recovered Republican. My name is Brianna, and today we are going to be talking to congressional candidate Drew Cox. So help me welcome him to the stage.
Hello.
Hello. How are you doing today?
Hi. Great, Brianna. How are you?
I am fantastic. Thank you so much for meeting with me. I'm excited to hear about your platform.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
Of course. So just start out with, tell us your full name as it will appear on the ballot and where you're running for, what you're running for, who's going to be able to vote for you.
Okay, my name is Drew Cox, and I am running for Indiana's 4th congressional district of the U.S. House of Representatives. So that's kind of northwest portion of northwest of Indianapolis. It's a district. It's one of 9 Indiana districts, and it has upwards of 800,000 voters. So pretty decent size. It's got 16 counties, but only 13 full, I believe. So 3 of the counties, Cass, Fountain, and Howard, are partially in this district. So anyone that is in that district can vote in the primary in May. There are a few of us running in the Democrat primary. And then if we're successful and make it past the primary, then the general election will be in just under a year's time, November of 2026. So
be here before you know it.
Yeah, it's moving by fast. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this year has gone so fast. But tell us a little bit about you. What is your day job?
So I am a visiting instructor at Purdue. I teach this semester. So we're wrapping up the fall semester. This semester I've been teaching music history 1, jazz history, drum set, which is the first time that Purdue has ever had drum set. So I helped roll out the drum set program, and then improvisation. So next semester I'm going to teach jazz history again, drum set again, and then it's going to be music history 2 and history of rock and roll. And I also play drums and percussion professionally, but now that the campaigning has begun, I don't have as much time to do that. So I play when I can. I play with the Lafayette Symphony Orchestra, which we have a show tomorrow night. I play in the Lafayette Citizens Band, and I play with a singer named Isaac Rudd, and he lives closer to Kokomo. And we play around Indianapolis, and regionally we get to other states and play as much as we can.
Very cool. So I'm just kind of smirking over here because I am actually, my undergrad is in vocal performance from DePaul University.
Nice.
And you're just giving me flashbacks of music history. It was a bear at DePaul. I thought I was going to quit. I am not a music history buff. The contextual listenings, I didn't understand them until I got into opera lit. And so it was just really hard.
Yeah. The joke that I made that I've been making. So my position at Purdue is kind of a rotate. I teach general things. I'm the drum set teacher, but my rotation is kind of like I teach this, I teach that. And I was worried about teaching music history 1 because that's a very difficult subject, antiquity up until Mozart. But the joke that I've been making is it's a good thing I've taken that class like 3 times. So I'm bachelor's, master's, and doctorate level. So I'm like, I'm good.
Awesome. Where did you go to college?
Anderson University for undergrad.
Okay.
And then I I played on cruise ships. I played drums on cruise ships, and then I joined the Marine Corps. And then after I got out of the Marine Corps, I used my GI Bill and went to Indiana University for a master's in percussion. And then I went to University of Illinois for a doctorate in jazz drum set performance.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know they had a program.
Yeah, there are not very many colleges that have a doctorate in jazz. But with, with the GI Bill and with graduate assistantships, I was able to do it and not take out any loans. So
Amazing. That's really great. I'm so happy for you because I am still paying off those student loans for my master's,
yeah,
personally. So, but tell me why did you want to run? What made you decide to get up and say, I'm going to run?
to be honest, the seeing people being taken off the streets by unidentifiable officers to unknown locations, um, I think that horrifying experience is probably the main reason that I've decided to run. But now that we are going around and hitting all the different counties of the district, the most important thing seems to be communities. It's being pushed around by corporations, data centers. So I think immigration, I would say communities and data centers, and then also just, affordable healthcare and an affordable economy. I think those are
Or
the
lack thereof, maybe.
yeah, striving towards an affordable economy. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, tell us is there anything you'd like to share with us about your family or pets, a little bit more about you?
I don't have, so I'm single and I have no kids and I have no pets at this point in time, but that's okay because I'm getting ready to go home, where I'm from originally, which is Henry County, Southern Henry County, which is Spiceland. My mom lives in Spiceland, and my dad farms outside of Newcastle, kind of outside of New Lisbon, Newcastle area. So that's where my family all is, and my mom has pets, so I'll be good. I just don't have really, life has gotten so busy that it's not really been possible to have. I love animals, but I can't really take care of them right now.
I understand. I was going to say, if you're door knocking, that takes a lot of time. So that's understandable. Maybe after the elections, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
I settle in a little bit more. Yeah.
yeah, of course. Well, tell me about your views on healthcare. What is the end goal, or what would you like to see change if you win?
We are pushing for Medicare for all. I think a single payer system for everybody in this country is long overdue, considering how many other developed countries offer some form of healthcare. I think
All
we
of
have
them.
plenty of money to do that. And, from a personal experience, Medicaid cuts, it's so unbelievable that like Mike Johnson and other people in the GOP kind of openly say we're not cutting Medicaid, and they massively cut Medicaid, And so, like for instance, my nephew, he's 14 years old. He was born with a heart defect, and he was born on Medicaid. Medicaid made that possible. He had to have a heart transplant at the age of 3. I believe he was 2 or 3. He was one of the youngest people ever to have a heart transplant. And so, over the summer, after having Medicaid for 14 years, my sister and my brother-in-law lost Medicaid. And other kids from Riley Children's Hospital have lost Medicaid, and they've lost disability. And so it's really despicable to hear GOP officials say we're not cutting it. They're acting like they're cutting waste, fraud, and abuse, but they're not looking at the main fraudsters. You've got hospitals, insurers, medical equipment manufacturers. Our attorneys general at all levels are supposed to be looking for that. Pam Bondi and Todd Rokita are not looking for any fraud anywhere. The only thing is this punishes people, as we're seeing. I mean, it just falls on people that are in need, and the real fraudsters are getting away with it. So I think we have enough money to take care of everyone. The first thing that this government did in the inauguration, we saw these billionaires descend upon the Capitol, and the first thing that happened was billionaire tax cuts.
Yeah, I am very sick of our government playing to corporations personally. Now, when you talk to people, and I think this is an important conversation to have because I think you can be a progressive and I think that you can also be pragmatic. Do you think that universal health care is the next logical step, or do you think that we're going to have to do some intermediary steps?
Yeah, we're such a big country, so it's not going to be as easy as it is in Norway, obviously. But certain things that we can look at, like our for-profit healthcare, is just an intrinsically flawed concept. The idea of people making profit with healthcare. So that's an issue, and one issue is with these subsidies, these ACA subsidies are extended, then yes, that's more profit in that's more money to insurers. So I'm not sure that we can. I'm not sure exactly the specifics, but I think I would advocate for aiming towards Medicare for all, and there might, we might not be able to immediately go from A to B. We might have to go to something in between that, but something very much needs to change because it's completely broken right now. So we have to be moving in the direction of affordable. We all have to get together and move in that direction one way or another. And I think that ultimately the goal should be Medicare for all. I think we can do that.
I agree. I do think that a good step, honestly, to the next step is to make it that you are not allowed to have healthcare that is for profit.
Yeah.
I think that should be criminalized, and when I say not for profit, I don't mean that we're not going to pay doctors what we pay them. They're still going to get paid what we pay them. We're just not going to allow companies to have billions of dollars in profit. So they either have to reinvest it into the company, into the healthcare, make our prices cheaper, or pay people more, like the doctors.
I was just reading about corporate tax rate. The corporate tax rate under Dwight Eisenhower, Republican Dwight Eisenhower, was like 90%. Mm-hmm. And when your corporate tax rate is really high, then corporations are less incentivized to declare a profit. They're more incentivized to spend that money on their workforce, to have a more robust ethical corporation, and not just say, I'm going to now the corporate tax rate is so low that the only incentive that corporations have is just declare everything as a profit. So yeah. I think we could have a higher corporate tax rate for sure.
Is that how we pay for all of this? Is that how we fund universal health care?
That's one step. I mean, rolling back the billionaire tax cuts is one. Taking the incentive away from for-profit insurers, and taking the for-profit nature out of it and redirecting that money towards people that need it. Would have to obviously come from multiple sources. I think we'd have to be creative and figure out, because people that have billions of dollars are not going to want to have tax increases, but if someone has to only have 900 million so that everyone can be taken care of, like, what is that really radical? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I I think socialist ideals have been made to seem radical when
Yeah.
to the rest of the world it's very normal. We are the only developed country in the world without universal health care.
Yeah.
And that's unacceptable, in my opinion. I mean, are we not smart enough as Americans to figure this out?
I think we can. I think it's just greed is and power and influence and lobbyists and that they can do a lot more than everyday people can. Everyday people can vote and can get themselves to work. And in a state like Indiana, even voting is difficult to do. Like it's not an easy state to vote in. So your voice is just very marginalized, particularly in a state like Indiana, unless you have a lot of money. Um, that's the thing I think that we need to switch in this society. The government is supposed to take care of people, of everyone equally, and we're just failing um, miserably at that right now.
Yeah. Well, you said that immigration kind of got you into this race. What would you do differently with immigration?
Well, for one, I think ICE's budget has now surpassed the United States Marine Corps, um, and the people that are getting into ICE. I think that the vetting process seems to be low. I don't know exactly, but um, I think I'm very concerned about all the people that are joining ICE and all the reasons that they're joining ICE. I think we need some serious immigration reform because immigration is designed to fail. I know the immigration wait times have only increased. So in the last 30 years, I think immigration wait times have probably doubled. Um, we saw a naturalization ceremony happen on Tuesday. I think it was Tuesday, in which 38 people that had gone through the process had passed tests, were turned away when they were supposed to become citizens. So you can't really make the argument to people just make the argument you should just go through the process. Just it's designed to fail. It's designed to take a long time. And if people argue that it's not designed to fail, well, the outcome is a failure. The result is that the wait times have doubled. That these people went through the process, and Trump just declared that their countries that they were from inherently make them some sort of a risk to our country. People from Afghanistan, people that did work for us, translators or interpreters. So, we need some comprehensive immigration reform in this country, and we need to stop looking at all other countries as adversaries. We need to not call countries S-hole countries. We need to not view the rest of the world as an adversary. We need to look at the rest of the world as a partner with us, because I think that the richness of our nation is our diversity.
Yeah, of course. I agree. I think it is absolutely absurd that those 38 people were not sworn in. I mean, the naturalization ceremony is simply a formality because you've already passed all the tests, you've already paid all the money, you've already done the background checks. So these are the people we want in the country. Yeah. And they just said, forget you, because we decided everyone from your country is a bad person, because that makes complete sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's just ridiculous.
And I think a lot of people don't realize, a lot of people think that immigration is entirely people coming across the border. A lot of it is people overstaying their visas. I think we need to educate people on immigration. People need to be educated. And I think once people are more informed, then maybe we won't have the lowest voter participation in the country. Maybe people will care more and realize that their vote matters and they can make change, because we do have, I think we're dead last in voter participation.
The last election, we were like 49th out of 50.
So, close enough.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So not great. But yeah, people are very apathetic here. I think the lowest one was like either 12 or 17 one year on a non-presidential year. It's absolutely abysmal. It's crazy. But let's talk about veterans. This seems to be a really big talking point for everyone. And one side seems to want to take care of veterans, while one seems to want to do the bare minimum they think they can get away with. Where do you stand on veteran affairs? Are we taking care of our veterans, or do we need to change what we're doing?
I think we're not. I think we are kind of taking care of our veterans, but I received a letter. I mean, I get all my health care through the VA. I received a letter a couple months ago, and it said, your doctor has left the VA to pursue another profession or something, or not profession, but a non-government job, and you have now been assigned a nurse practitioner. So there's been all kinds of disruption at the VA since this administration started. So there's been, there's hiring freezes, and they're redirecting all this money, and they're talking openly about trying to cut the VA back down to like 2019 levels. So there's a lot of disruption. And there's also a pretty open desire from the GOP to move towards privatization, which is a terrible idea, because our current health care system for our citizens, our regular citizens, is not good enough. So if you're going to push, veterans into that market, that's not going to solve any sort of problems whatsoever. We need a robust VA healthcare system. And the current administration, I think, is really trying to sell people on privatization, which is, again, that goes from, that turns your healthcare into for-profit healthcare when you do that. So I think the record, between the two parties is pretty clear on who's more pro-veteran. And I think it's the Democrat Party is better, has a better record for taking care of veterans. And the Democrats do not, myself included, do not want to push veterans into a public for-profit system.
Yeah, I think another way to get people to understand the for-profit versus having the city or the state take care of it is to take a look at utilities. Our utilities are for-profit companies, and we are suffering because of that, because they are allowed to do these deals and to expand and have Hoosiers pay off their debts. And I don't think that should be legal. I think that should be illegal, and that is just more corporate handouts.
Yeah, we've got, I think every urban area in the state of Indiana is controlled by investor-owned utilities that are for-profit, and our rates are going through the roof in Indiana. Our utility rates for residential consumers has been higher than the commercial or the industrial sector for a while. But now it's just doing this, and residents are paying for these data centers. We're paying for these corporations to come in and not give us very many jobs, and we are, our utility rates are completely unacceptable, and that's something that we need to look at. For-profit utilities, just the same thing as for-profit healthcare.
So is that how we fix the utility problem? That was going to be another question, is do we stop allowing them to be for profit?
I think so. Look at Nebraska. I think Nebraska has, I need to look more into this, but I was reading the other day, I think it's Nebraska has no for-profit utilities. and that's not something that you would expect. I could be wrong, but I'd also, I'd like to see the comparison. That's something I didn't get to. I'd like to see a comparison between residential consumer, rates between Nebraska and Indiana, and also our investor-owned utilities. They've donated millions of dollars to politicians, so that's another thing is how are we going to pry that apart when when you're basically now allowed in the Citizens United age to you can somehow give millions of dollars to people that are going to increase their rate on consumers, and it's a very deep and complicated problem. So but we need to first address it and then communicate to people that that's why it's so expensive. And then we need to elect people that are not bought and paid for, and we need to, elect people that are not just going to allow investor-owned utilities to keep walking all over us and corporations to keep walking all over our communities and pushing the costs down to the bottom.
Absolutely. Well, let's change gears a little bit. Tell me about changes to the law that you think need to be made to protect or defend LGBTQIA plus rights, or LGBTQ prime or premium, as someone else told me in another interview.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, considering the Supreme Court, we heard news that the Supreme Court was going to relitigate same-sex marriage. I think it's time to probably make a national law recognizing same-sex marriage. I was actually Indiana is also, just a side note, is one of several states that does not specifically ban LGBTQ discrimination. I was actually in Afghanistan when Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed. So Don't Ask, Don't Tell, you did not disclose your, orientation, but you were not supposed to talk about it. But if you were outed as being gay, then you could be kicked out of the military. So it was a very difficult and silly thing that lasted for a while. And I remember being in Afghanistan when that was repealed. And I remember that absolutely no one talked about it at all. It was like something that you already knew, and it was not an issue. I think that we're just really behind the times, and we need a national law recognizing same-sex marriage. I think we need to allow trans people to be in the military. Indiana just passed a couple years ago as HB House Bill 1608, the Don't Say Gay bill. Don't Say Gay bill, which means that if a student wants to change their pronouns, the teacher has to let their parent know within a few days. And I think that that's really problematic. I think ultimately that kind of legislation really, trying to say that up until third or fourth grade, there should be no sex education whatsoever, then that communicates that people that are that young that might identify that way should not exist, and I think that legislation like that ultimately, controls what youth can't, bleeds into what, banning books, that leads into young folks in our schools, what they can and cannot learn. And most troubling is like who they can and cannot be, as a child at school. So I think Indiana's a little bit, obviously Indiana's a red state. I think we need some federal legislation to to recognize same-sex marriage and and um,
Protect some people, maybe.
protect our most vulnerable. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the role of the government. That should be the role of the government. So,
Could be, not always how it's been playing out. But let's talk about the housing crisis. What do you think is causing this? What's the solution?
um, I went to a seminar in West Lafayette a few weeks ago called Beyond the Bridge, and Beyond the Bridge, we watched a movie. It was a documentary called Beyond the Bridge, a solution to homelessness, I believe. And there was a really uh, striking quote in there, and it was, if you have unaffordable housing in your backyard, you will have homeless people in your front yard. And I think with housing, that is, this obviously the solution to homelessness is homes, right? But the reason that we can't do that we can't put everyone into homes, is because homes are unaffordable. There's no shortage of housing. There's a shortage of affordable housing. And so you have these corporations like BlackRock that buy up all these homes, and then they sell them for a massive profit. That's another thing that I think that you should look at as not a for-profit situation. You should not be able to buy up thousands and thousands of homes and then increase the price and make a huge profit, because that's just that's going to cause people to be homeless. Those people rent, and housing is already very, very unaffordable. So I think that if I were to be elected, one thing that to address like homelessness would be, one thing that I learned from the documentary was that it's such a multifaceted problem. So everyone needs to be at the table. You've got, judiciary, law enforcement, politicians, volunteer. Like the documentary talked about how everyone needs to come together, and that's the only way that you're going to solve the problem. So yeah, in another thing, like homeless shelters, homeless shelters are not really a solution. And there's also a decent amount of fraud with homeless shelters. I think the solution to homelessness is permanent homes. We need to figure out how to put people in permanent homes, not shelters, and we need to make housing more affordable, and we need to rein in on corporations like BlackRock that are making things worse for everyone that's not super rich, pretty much.
Absolutely. We have some comments. Someone says homelessness is the byproduct of capitalism. Any thoughts?
Well, with that example with BlackRock, yeah, but we can be a capitalist society and not necessarily accept all these things. We don't have to necessarily. I'm not sure that our country is ready to completely get rid of capitalism. I think we need to have. I think we can have multiple things at once. I think we can take money out of politics and put politicians into play that will not be minions of these massive corporations. So I think getting money out of politics is a step. Like Citizens United is a disaster, I think, for everyday folks. There are so many things that are disastrous for everyone that's just not rich. And when you look at the makeup of our electorate or throughout the country, how much people are being paid by corporations, how few people are grassroots campaigns. We're a grassroots campaign. We're not going to take any money from BlackRock. We're not going to take any money from AIPAC. We're going to take money, and we're going to only take that money and put it towards the people of the 4th District. So
good. Well, tell me about what you think of the current economic plan in this country. What would you like to do differently?
Well, our current economic plan seems to be trickle down economics, which we've already tried and failed at for like 40, 50 years straight. Um, if I were to be elected into Congress, one thing that I would try to make a lot of noise about right off the bat is Congress is supposed to be the one that asserts dominance with regard to tariffs. I mean, Article 1, Section 8, I think, the Constitution clearly lays out that Congress is supposed to be in control of tariffs. And right now, tariffs, again, a thing that is just basically screwing over people that are not rich. Tariffs are just taxes passed on to consumers. And all the revenue that we're generating that the White House is bragging about is just basically been a tax on people that are buying goods. Our economy is maybe also, not maybe, is artificially inflated by AI. And I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about the economy crashing. Things are looking kind of similar to the way that they looked, in the 1920s, with regard to these tariffs. And we need to create an economy that works for people that make $50,000 a year. And that's not the economy that we have right now. It's a rich man's game.
Yeah, it is definitely. If you're rich, you can get even more money so fast. But if you are not rich, it is a grind for everyone. But we were kind of touching on this earlier, that Indiana doesn't really have good voter access. How do we improve this?
Well, yeah, we do. There was a law recently, or not a law, that they, state issued IDs at universities have been banned as an ID card to vote in Indiana. So even though a Purdue student ID or an IU student ID is a government created by the government, and there's virtually no fraud with people using student IDs. The Indiana legislature just said you can't use a student ID to vote. I mean, that's just so silly because there's not really any fraud with people using student IDs. We also have, one of the longest times in Indiana. You have to register something like 29 days before the election. When I moved to Illinois, my mind was blown because was like getting ready to vote, and I was like, oh shoot, I need to drive all the way back home to vote. And I registered the same day in Illinois and was able to vote in the 2020 election when I lived there. So Indiana has a lot of barriers to voting. We've had a Republican supermajority for a long time, and it's one of the hardest states to vote in. So I don't know that that's a coincidence. I think it's our civic duty to make it easier to vote. And of course, we should not have, of course, I would not ever want to see voting fraud, but, there's not voting fraud associated with student IDs. There's, these things that politicians create that have a very terrible effect, and straw man, boogeyman kind of arguments that keep barriers to voting access, essentially.
Yeah. How do you feel about the idea of switching to kind of like Colorado, where we do all mail-in voting? So then people can actually just sit down, fill out their ballot, and then turn it in.
That sounds great. That sounds like I have friends from Ireland, and they talk about voting in Ireland, and there's no lines, they can just show up and they just vote. And in Indiana, our clerks kind of dictate, where you can and can't vote. And, like you can't even vote at Purdue, didn't have a voting location, so if we're going to have these types of barriers, then yeah, I'd say, of course, mail-in voting for everyone sounds terrific.
Yeah, I would love to see the entire country go to that, honestly. How do you feel about ranked choice voting?
I haven't thought about that a whole lot. I mean,
That's okay. That was one I just threw at you. It might be something you want to look into. I think it's good because I think that part of the reason people in Indiana are not engaged is that I think some people don't feel like they have a party that really represents them. And that's fine. But the way that the two-party system is set up, it doesn't allow really for third parties or independents to really run very easily. But ranked choice voting would help make it so that they could.
That's a great point. With our two parties and the impossibility of independence, or I mean, there's not really a third option. And it's so incredibly difficult to run as someone that's not a Republican. If you want to run as an independent, it's very difficult to do. You have to get so many signatures. So well, when you consider our two-party monopoly, ranked choice voting would definitely be something to consider.
Okay.
Yeah.
So people on the right love to yell, it's the guns. It's not the guns that kill people, it's people that kill people. Is that true, or do you think there's more to it?
I think nuance is a word that a lot of our politicians need to. You ask these people questions and they give you really hysterical answers. People do kill people, but they do it with guns. And, we have a lot of guns. I own a few myself. But the price of us being able to have guns is, gun violence, not just gun violence, but also our gun, like drug cartels get a lot of their guns from United States gun shows because it's so easy to purchase guns, and there's no real tests for you to pass if you're going to acquire, an AR-15, which is very similar to the, M16A2 that, we were given in boot camp. When you're given a weapon in the military, you have to live with that thing with no ammunition whatsoever for a very long time. You have to demonstrate that you very clearly understand how to handle that weapon. You have to demonstrate that you're very responsible. So I think it's very fair to look at, our gun laws and say that we're not doing enough with the cost of us being able to have all these guns comes at a very high price. And I think that we need to also do more to prosecute, parents that if their child obtains a weapon and causes injury or death as a result, then those parents should be liable for that destruction. So I think we're just definitely not doing enough. I think we're going to be much more responsible while still having the right to own firearms.
I do think there's a middle ground that needs to be reached because there's so many things, like Indiana's lax gun laws. I've seen some statistics that a lot of the violent crimes that are happening in Chicago are happening with weapons that were purchased in Indiana.
Yep.
So, I mean, are we just being irresponsible as a state with this?
Yeah. Yes, I think we are. The gun show loopholes. And like I said, I mean, I'm a person that I'm a responsible firearm owner myself. I was in the Marine Corps. I grew up, my dad is a fourth generation farmer, but there's a massive gap that we need to close. And the Second Amendment, I think, is not something that, if you want to look at the Second Amendment and give that a literal translation, does that mean we can own unlimited nuclear weapons? I mean, right to bear arms shall not be infringed, So if you really let's be practical for a second. Do you really think that the right to bear arms shall not be infringed? And plus, that amendment is really towards state militias. It's kind of I think it's kind of a poorly worded and obviously very archaic amendment. So I think we can do a lot better with firearms and safety and gun violence is the number one cause of death for young people in America, I believe.
It's the number one reason for death in children.
Yes, so we need to address that as a health concern.
And we're also seeing. So I'm a speech language pathologist by trade. So and I do early intervention. One of the things that we talked about in the conference I went to over the summer is that we are seeing a lot of an increase in suicide deaths in children as young as like 5 and 7, 8 years old.
Wow. Yeah.
And it is, I just like bring this up because I think that people don't get it. I think they think it's like we can only talk about guns and we can only talk about healthcare and mental health over here. But it really is a combination. We really need universal healthcare to help with this gun problem because so many people are not taking care of their mental health. I mean, it's so important. It will change your life to take care of your mental health, but so many people don't. And for a child that young to think the only way out is suicide, we are doing something wrong as a society.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't consider it as an aspect of healthcare. It's like too offensive to consider gun violence an aspect of healthcare, but we need to get with the times and strive for much better because the status quo is not cutting it right now with regard to gun violence.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Indiana's frequent race to the bottom with things like education. What are your plans to improve our education system?
I first and foremost would say no taxpayer money to private schools, to charter schools. Like 1 in 3 charter schools have closed that have opened. So the percentage of charter schools that have like folded, and that's just a massive disruption to education. And also, no new child vouchers until 2027 for families that are in need. I think it's 2027. You can't get a new voucher if you're trying to get into the system. So, I mean, that's one of those things where I look at our government as a massive failure. Like, what is the purpose of being in government if you're going to eliminate the income cap? So that basically people that go to charter schools, it started, charter schools were need-based criteria. And and that's how it started. And now there is no need-based criteria to get a charter school voucher. School boards have been politicized. I don't know how in the world that's going to make things better. I would say we need to depoliticize school boards, and we're just going in the wrong direction in so many different ways. Like, students of color were 24% of vouchers, and now I think it's less than 10%. So we're leaving people behind, and it's just more of a be rich or sorry. We need to speaking of friends from Ireland that I was talking about, that's another thing they talk to me about is property tax in schools. They look at how, this one school is rich because that area is rich, and this school over here on the other side of the county is poor because they don't have as much money. And they look at that as like, how is that your education system? Like, how do we leave schools behind like that?
Because in the Republican Party, certain children are not worth it to them. That is the honest truth when it comes down to it.
Yeah, I can't argue with that.
Yeah. Okay, so going to data centers, we talked about that's the reason that the utilities are skyrocketing. Is there a way for data centers to come to Indiana ethically and responsibly, or should we just be banning these?
Well, our campaign's gone around to some data center town halls, and we've listened to people talk about data centers coming in, and there's different, ways that the data center can be built. It can have a closed loop system in which, it uses recycled water. There are open loop systems. I'm not a genius on data centers, obviously, but the open loop system means that you're using water and maybe half of it goes back into the water table and half of it is lost to evaporation or whatever. So the thing is with data centers, though, is people are trying to get data centers to be ethical. They're pushing for closed loop systems. But the local governments, the county commissioners and I really want to get, see behind closed doors, like what are they talking about? Because, these people they're bringing the data centers in, and the data centers are saying, no, we're not going to do a closed loop system. And the communities are still saying, okay, well, you can come in, you can take open loop system, you can have tax abatement, you can provide not very many jobs, you can consume 4 million gallons of water a day, you can jack up our electricity costs. Like, I'm trying to get to the bottom of how this is happening in so many communities, and behind closed doors with local governments and county commissioners and whatnot. That's where the problem is. That's where it's happening. That's who's letting it in. So trying to, as a congressional candidate, a federal congressional candidate, there's not much probably I would have to do with the data center that's coming into White County. I mean, that's their local elected officials that are dealing with it. So I went to White County to Reynolds a couple weeks ago and listened to them talk about the data center that's coming, and it was just profoundly terrible for the community. And our campaign is trying to, see through the cracks and see how these things are happening, because they're just completely terrible for the community. I don't know if there's really an ethical way for data centers to come in unless they're going to give back a lot to the community. Like, one example that someone talked about in Reynolds a few weeks ago was this data center that had come in up around Hammond or somewhere. They were using water from Lake Michigan. So seemingly no issue with fresh water there. And then they created like a scholarship for all these seniors that were going to graduate from this, that live in this town in the area for like years to come, things like that. But that is just a one in 100 case. Most of the cases that I'm seeing are they're just going to come in and consume your water and jack up your rates and tell you that we created 20 jobs.
Yeah.
So right now, it just doesn't look at the way to do it ethically seems to be a very difficult path for communities.
Okay. Well, we are coming up on the end of our segment here. So tell people where they can find your information, more on your platform information and what social media you're on.
Okay. DrewCox.org. Nice and easy. That's the main website. We have an X account, Twitter, X, whatever you call it. We've got Blue Sky and TikTok. And then on Facebook, there's Drew Cox for Congress. And on Instagram, I believe that one's called Drew Cox for Indiana. But I think if you go to the website, drewcox.org. We have every social linked there where you can learn more about our positions, and you can volunteer. You can sign up to volunteer. You could donate if you want, and that on the website. So yeah, just go to the main website, drewcox.org, and from there you can find everything else.
Great. And I want to remind everyone that giving just a few dollars, even just the amount that it costs for a cup of coffee, can be helpful for grassroots candidates, because again, he's not taking money from corporations or PACs and big companies that have a lot of money. He's taking only small donations from people like you and me. And so even if it's just $5, that's okay. You can also do recurring donations of like a couple bucks a month. That also is very helpful. So don't hesitate to give money because it's a small amount, is what I'm saying. Well, Drew, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was really great getting to know you. Is there anything else that you would like to say or want us to know about you before we head off?
No, I appreciate your little talking about the donations. It's really hard to ask for money. I don't really like asking for money, but thank you for basically telling the people that, yeah, we are a grassroots organization, and we are only taking money from, everyday folks. We've got recurring donations of $5. We've got some people that are like doing $5 a month. We've got $50 here, $10 there, so yeah, we're grassroots, and we're for the people. And we think that the main problem in this country is not necessarily right versus left; it's top versus bottom. And we would like to make an economy that is affordable for and equitable for everyone, regardless of how much money you make or what you look like.
Amazing. I love that. Well, thank you again. And if you have a few dollars, go to drewcox.org and give him a few dollars, because I'm sure you need money. And I will ask again. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. And I hope to see you again soon.
Thank you very much for having me, Brianna. Look forward to talking to you again.
Absolutely. Have a great night, everyone.